So I'm Graham Breen. I look after partnerships and business development with Innoactive. I've been around in the world of VR now for quite some time, since actually late 14, early 15. So previously was with HTC Vive, and I'm very pleased to be here today with Tony. I'll let Tony introduce himself and then we'll step into the presentation.
Sounds good, Graham. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Tony Bevilacqua. I'm the founder and CEO of Cognitive 3D. We've been operating since 2015, first product in market 2016. We focus primarily on analytics, and I'm obviously going to get into that today. Just wanted to do a quick thank you for the folks who put this together. Daniel, David, Graham, Natalia, Calder, and Albert from my side. There's a number of folks involved with not just the organization of the webinar, but also the organization and the logistics of doing the integration, the actual work that needed to occur to make that all happen. So some of you are on the call. Thanks for that.
Totally, and I can only echo that. Thank you for the people who have worked to make this a reality. So when I say make a reality, maybe we should just jump straight into the slides, actually, because the next slide is really the reality we are talking about. So today we're announcing actually a partnership between Innoactive and Cognitive 3D. We're working together. We're bringing our two areas of expertise, and we're going to dig in this presentation a bit more into each of those areas. So in summary, though, Innoactive, our whole reason for being is to help companies scale VR training. And Cognitive 3D are the specialists in the industry for analytics, understanding what people are doing in VR. So it's kind of a marriage made in heaven, actually, though, combining those two factors, training and taking the data from that training. So that's the exciting news we've got today. What does partnership mean, though? So maybe we'll dig into that a bit more in the next few minutes in terms of the presentation. So if we move to the next slide just quickly, and I'm sorry for the people who are long-term veterans of the industry, but in case anybody isn't, and something that we live with every day, we know VR training works. It really does work, and it has a proven business impact. This case study here, for example, it's not one we produced, actually, it was ours, but it was also ours in collaboration with Innoactive, but with Unity, my bad, Unity and Volkswagen. And we had some great statistics out of this. So they halved the training times, it took a third off the costs, and nearly all of the trainees, 97%, would recommend it to other people being trained. So VR training works. And we find that with the number of customers and companies who are getting involved with us. So if you just want to jump to the next slide quickly, Tony, thanks. I mean, we've got some of these, some of the brands dotted down beneath there. These are brands that we as Innoactive work with. One thing combines all of these companies. They've all got one thing in common, and that's that they're looking to scale their VR training. So it's not just a case of producing one training module and rolling that out. It's how can they build that properly into their working processes? How can they build multiple modules, and how can we help them do that? So if you just jump to the next slide, Tony. And this comes back to the core of what we do as Innoactive. We build tools that allow people to do that. So we've got two core products. One is, and the name says it all, is the creator. It's all about building great VR content. And the other is the portal, and that's about secure deployment. I'm going to dig into a bit more detail in a moment. But one of the challenges we've found over the years, actually, because Innoactive as a company has been around for 6 or 7 years, but one of the challenges we found that a lot of our customers face is it's actually quite costly and time consuming to build multiple pieces of VR content. So how could, I think when building a creator is, how can we standardize that? How can we turn it into, say, a template that you can quickly and easily build upon, much like we did for this slide deck here? So it's taken some of the same methodology and turning it into a platform that people could quickly and easily build their training content in. And I'll go into the creator in a bit more detail in a moment, because that's the crux of what we're doing today. The second product, though, is actually equally important for us, and it's called the portal. And Portal is, in some ways, it's kind of our Netflix, if you like, for VR training applications. If you've got a VR training application and you want to share it, that's always been a bit messy. I've shared too many on WeTransfer in my previous life to not realize that. But it gets even more complex when you're sharing at scale. And that's a lot of applications to a lot of users where you're looking to control, for example, access rights, version management, and security. And the key thing that all of our customers ask for is security. How can they securely deploy their assets, their IP, and not let that go to the wrong place and to the wrong people? And that's the problem we solve with the portal. We're not going to go into the portal today, but if anybody is interested in that, and also how you can actually stream content over the cloud, for example, so 5G streaming or XR streaming, please do get in touch, because that's a large part of our product makeup. But yeah, today I'm going to focus on the creator. So if we just jump to the next slide, Tony. Sorry, Tony, could you just go to the next slide? There we go. I can hear the keyboard moving. Okay, don't worry, I can talk. Here we go. Here's the creator. I can talk about it anyway. So yeah, the creator's whole purpose is to simplify and help to scale VR training. What does that mean? It means that it actually opens up building training for people who aren't necessarily Unity developers, who don't maybe have coding skill. So we've got a visual interface, and if you look at the lower half of the screen here, you can actually see that the visual interface, and it's building process steps. Step 1, step 2, step 3. And it's very quick and easy then to drag, drop, and add new items. And from there, actually also to add objects, to add behaviors, and to help to build a template where you can standardize from, and then build multiple pieces of training on top of that. The purpose of this is to make building training far quicker and far cheaper as a result, because that's one of the biggest problems that our customers have been facing. So if you do have a highly flexible and customizable need, you can develop your own templates, you can build in your own behaviors. But once you've got that, then you can actually give these templates to people who aren't necessarily sort of standard Unity developers, who don't have that Unity experience, or don't have that coding experience, I should say, and they can quickly and easily build training modules. So give it to the training experts rather than just to the developers. And the reusability is a core part of that. So what makes a lot of building VR expensive is having to start from scratch every time. And with the creator, that's what you're not doing. You've already got the standardized behaviors, template, assets, all the things you need. So if you're building multiple pieces of training for one company, you can easily and quickly scale that. So if we jump to the next slide, Tony. So yeah, there's just a couple of examples of how that looks. As I mentioned, it's got a visual editor, so it's very quick and easy to understand. I'm presenting here as a non-coder, by the way, and I can understand and build training in the creator, which I think is probably the best proof of concept I can offer. As mentioned, you can build a custom template. So this particular image here is e-car charging with Volkswagen. But yeah, you can build your own templates to integrate your specific behaviors, because every company is different, and every company looking to scale VR training has their own unique factors, and we can adapt, and you can adapt your templates to those factors. And then you can share them. You can share them either with the training creators within your company, or to those who are going to develop them. So yeah, one more slide onwards, please, Tony. So the creator is a great tool for helping to scale VR, but what we've not had in there up to now is actually analytics, and that's the core of today's presentation, is VR analytics. So when we did a webinar about 6 weeks ago, actually, the last webinar we held, we kind of had on the radar that we were going to be doing this analytics webinar. So we asked our audience, what would they like to see actually? How do you see analytics as being a crucial part of a training tool? And we had a really positive response, and it kind of proved that we should be doing a webinar on this, and we should be working on the integration that we were working on this. So 47.9% of the people who responded said yes, they wanted to analyze performance. As companies, they wanted to analyze performance of what the workers were doing to help them to understand multiple factors. The counter side of that, 14.1 said no. And also kind of interesting, lots of people wanted to use it, but to improve their apps. That's partially because we had a few developers on the call, but also partially because it is the best way to understand what works and what doesn't work. So on the back of that, we asked a secondary question, and we left it as a sort of a free text box. And that's why I like, by the way, the fact that people can complete the polls today, because this information really is useful for us to understand. So if you go to the next slide, thank you. So yeah, of those people who said yes, they wanted to measure what happens in their apps, these were some of the answers they gave. So of course, probably the one that came out most frequently, performance, understanding what people are doing. But movement, time, they wanted to compare. They wanted to look at, for example, attention to detail. They wanted to create benchmarking. Wants to understand people's inputs. So we had some really interesting sort of feedback in there. And that's kind of the perfect segue actually to the second part of this presentation, because as I mentioned, we are partnering with Cognitive 3D, and this is really their bread and butter. So what we've been working on recently with them is actually integrating the Cognitive 3D platform, so understanding analytics and our creator. So it's bringing together the ability to scale and the ability to understand. And with that, I'm going to pass over to Tony, who is an expert and long-standing worker in analytics. Over to you, Tony.
Sounds good. Appreciate the introduction, Graham, and happy to walk you through the integration that we did with Innoactive and the creator tools. But I wanted to start with just some foundational things as well. I did a pretty good review of the attendee list, and I think there's a lot of people thinking about analytics and what's different, and a little bit less on the technical side, a little bit more on the product side. How do I apply this to my enterprise, and how do I leverage this? What's different from my previous experience within the industry as well? So I wanted to start with the evolution of metrics, right? So we think about way back in Web 1.0 and 2.0. The real outcomes were focused on, clicks and page views, bounce rate, time on page, those types of things. And, we had tools that were available in the market like Google Analytics and Urchin that really kind of dominated and led the way. But there was an evolution, and that evolution came through the introduction of mobile-based devices. And mobile-based devices brought in a slew of, new capabilities through taps and touches and slides and cameras and gyroscopes and geolocation and all sorts of things like that. And it really brought on an evolution in the types of metrics that were being collected and the types of companies that were serving those particular areas. So we saw companies like Flurry and Mixpanel and others develop from that to be able to more directly address and help those customers understand how interaction was occurring within their applications. When you think about mobile, it was typically about, the path, the drill down and, the funnel in which users take through a mobile application. But if you think about the agency that a user has in a mobile application, they have one of a few options, right, from each different screen. So it's a very easy, thing to measure. It's something that you can simply measure with events. When I started Cognitive 3D back in 2015, I was working in this mobile space. I was building analytics for games and all sorts of tools like that. But when I saw VR and AR at GDC back in 2015, I really realized that these tools weren't going to meet the requirements or not going to meet the mark in terms of the amount of agency that users have within immersive space. A whole slew of new sensors and capabilities existed, like eye focus, head movement, 3D positioning, hand engagement, and biometrics. And none of the tools on the market were even slicing the surface of what those capabilities were, and not to mention how can we measure and understand them and make them something valuable for our business. So we started a mission back in 2016 with our first product into market, and focusing on building these tools and helping our customers understand how to make use of these new capabilities. So I'm going to talk, before I get into the integration, I'm going to talk about just our flagship tool and some of the additional capabilities here, and then I'll jump back over to how the integration works and what we've done there. So the first tool that we took to market back in 2016 was a tool called Scene Explorer. And the purpose of Scene Explorer was really to kind of tap into all the different capabilities that we have with immersive content and immersive experiences. So it provides what's called an after action review. This is something that the DoD, military, Defense Department has been using for literally 20, 30 years, right? But now you've got consumer level hardware, enterprise level hardware in the market, and you have that capability to use and utilize the same tooling that these broader government enterprises were already using all along. And the after action tool is something that gives you an automatic replay of exactly what a user did and how they interacted inside of a 3D experience. Now, simply by integrating the SDK from Cognitive 3D into an Innoactive Creator project in Unity, you automatically get a full after action review on any content that you've authored inside the Creator environment. And why this is important is it gives you an outcome for your different stakeholders within your organization. That includes stakeholders like trainers or the employee themselves, the ability to review and understand what happened in each individual session. Now, because this is a 3D based recreation, you do have abilities to look at how that user's engaging. So the different purple spheres that are represented within space here, these are all the different fixations that are going on within space. What is the user looking at and how are they engaging with their eyes? We have the ability through the Creator and Unity to subscribe that data to the different elements that are located within the scene. So if you have different hazards that are located throughout the experience, you'd have the ability to just subscribe gaze or fixations, if you have eye tracking, to the different objects that are located within the screen to get better visibility on how users are engaging in that 3D environment. The tool allows you to manipulate the different types of data that is being collected. So we collect things like gaze and fixations through eye tracking and head position. We also collect the user's path, right? So if you have a large space and the user has the agency to navigate through it, we track the path that the user might take within that particular environment. We also collect spatial events. So not only are we collecting when an event occurs, but we're also collecting where an event occurs, right? So in this case, the user put on their PPE, we can also see where that happened within the context of space, as opposed to the number of times something may have happened as well. An interesting trend that we're seeing as we navigate this space is there's more and more advanced capabilities coming from the hardware providers. One of those hardware providers that we work really closely with is HP and the HP OmniSep. Now, the HP OmniSep gives you capabilities to monitor things like cognitive load, as well as heart rate from those experiences as well. By simply using that headset in conjunction with Creator and the Cognitive 3D platform, you have the ability to ingest that biometric data and also have that available inside the visualization as well. It allows you to visualize where the peaks and valleys are within your experience and identify what might be going on with a particular user. I'm just going to pause just for a minute because my voice is a bit hoarse here for a sec. I warned Graham ahead of time that my voice is a little bit on the end of a cold here, unfortunately. Anyway, so that's Scene Explorer. The second tool that I really wanted to show you today is the ability to automatically assess what's going on without bias within a training and simulation environment. We created the objective system on purpose. It was something that our customers identified back in 2018, 2019. We wanted a non-biased way to be able to evaluate what users are doing within a 3D environment and how well they're performing against sequential and non-sequential behavior. And this is something that I think really complements the Creator toolset, because the Creator toolset gives you that capability to build through your different scenarios and tie those scenarios together. But when it comes to measurement and understanding performance, this toolset allows you to actually set up all the different steps that represent compliance and completion for your organization and set up the different business rules that are required for users to be successful within their environment. In the scenario that I'm showing you today, this is called an after action review. And not an after action review. This is a lockout tagout scenario. In a lockout tagout scenario, we want them to equip their PPE. We want them to notice the different hazards that are located within the scene. In our case, it's the breaker door, as well as the lockout box. And we also want them to notify their supervisor that they're going to be proceeding with work. So in this case, we've set up a number of different business rules that include things like events, but you can also contemplate things like fixation. So capturing eye gaze data or how users are manipulating different objects with their hands. So in this case, we've checked the user's PPE. We make sure that they fixate on the two different hazards, and then we have them notify their supervisor as they progress through the scenario. Now, building these business rules is actually really, really simple. You set up your different events, fixation, gaze, or even polling questions that you might want to introduce within your experience. We then qualify those tools or those criteria against different event names. Did those events occur or not occur? We can also make sure that those events are associated with the appropriate equipment or different stimuli that might be present within the scene. So in the case of notify supervisor, we might want to make sure that's associated to the appropriate person. And then we also might want to qualify that event with different types of event properties that can be sent along with the stimuli. Same thing goes for fixation data as well. You can actually measure, did the user look at a particular object within the scene or did not look at a particular object in the scene for at least or not at all a particular object. And this gives you the ability to build a fully qualified sequential or non-sequential process that's going to be evaluated within the environment. Once you have all your steps set up within the environment, you get a nice burn down. How long did it take an average user to complete the various steps as they move through the experience? How many completions did we see on each of the steps? And we can see a nice burn down represented here as well as the user progresses through the experience. We also get the ability to see the individual session outcomes for each individual user. So again, just by simply integrating the SDK, we automatically collect every single session, a whole bunch of criteria and properties about those sessions in terms of geolocation, what devices they're using, any biometric data that we may have collected, room specifications, those types of things. And then alongside that, we've got our objective results. Now, the interesting part about the objective system is that it allows you to run multiple different questions at the same time. So if you have a lot of different types of questions that you might want to ask about your users, you do have the ability to run multiple sets of criteria. And the other interesting part about this tool is that it's completely retroactive, meaning that you can actually ask different questions after data is already being collected, and the system will automatically reprocess all of that data for you and give you the updated result. So it's really simple to kind of get those outcomes and be able to ask different questions of your users within that particular environment. Now, let's talk a little bit about the integration that we did with this tool set. So on the integration side, inside of Creator, we simply added Cognitive 3D as a native behavior within the authoring tools. So what this allows you to do is actually just tie the different types of custom events or behaviors that you might want as part of the different steps that you might be creating within the experience. You can then configure that behavior with some additional criteria, such as the event name. when you want this this behavior to be executed, as well as any other relationships that might be associated with this event, such as the dynamic object, which is an important element inside of our system to be able to subscribe different types of behavior to objects that the user might see within their scene. This gives you the ability to quickly tie the cognitive 3D event capabilities into your simulation without doing any additional work. The actual after action review that I showed you before, all of those tools are native within the system and will automatically collect that data simply by importing the SDK. This behavior system is really focused on giving us an additional bit of context that is important for understanding what are the steps that are being executed here, and can we measure those steps using the objective system later to create a more sequential process we can measure against when evaluating that particular user. So once you get the Cognitive 3D SDK integrated, you set up your behaviors, you can go through the objective tool, set up all the different steps that you might be interested in including, and you'll be off to the races. Now, one of the things I wanted to cover today is really an area that customers have been asking us a lot about, and that's really around learning management systems. Learning management systems are, a really important aspect of scaling virtual, augmented, and mixed reality applications. There are standards out there like XAPI, and it's certainly a rabbit hole that we've taken a look at and went down to be able to offer some standard capabilities within the platform. But unfortunately, those standards aren't necessarily always followed by the different LMS providers that are actually on the market. So the way that our system works is that instead of trying to tie in a specific LMS into the content itself, we take a server-side approach, a cloud-side approach, right? So the general idea here is that you provide a stream of data from the Cognitive 3D SDK and the Creator SDK to the Cognitive 3D Cloud. And once you have that stream of data, we evaluate it using the objective system on the cloud, and then the Cognitive 3D Cloud pushes it to one or many different LMS connections that may exist within the Cognitive 3D platform. And this gives you the flexibility to support one or many different LMS systems from your single piece of content for various customers that you might be deploying out in the field. So it provides more of a unified approach for evaluating in a singular location, but then pushing that evaluated behavior through the objective system to the various third-party LMS tools that helps you tie the immersive content into the rest of the company's overall processes, right? So if you've got a existing LMS system within the enterprise, it makes a lot more sense to try to tie in to those existing systems and become a native capability of that particular process versus trying to sell something into the enterprise, sell something into IT that's from scratch, that's going to have to operate independently from the rest of the organization's processes. So that's what the LMS data flow is all about. And it's something that we're bringing through to Innoactive Creator through the integration of the Cognitive 3D SDK. So I'm going to go ahead and open to questions at this point, Graham. I didn't want to get too much in the weeds here on the technical.
We purposefully left the presentation actually reasonably short because we generally find that by far the most value that comes from a lot of these sessions is responding directly to you rather than just sort of preaching at you. It's much better to understand what comes back from you. So yeah, we're going to go into a Q&A. I should just say, by the way, if you want to get in touch with either of us, our companies, here's our details. So there's our email addresses. Otherwise, you can find us on LinkedIn or elsewhere. But yeah, otherwise, I'm going to pass over to our question master, Natalia, who's been picking them up
from the background. All right, we have quite a few questions and they keep coming. So I'm gonna pay attention while you're answering. So first question, does the Creator offer out-of-the-box pipeline for CAD optimization, or do you rely on Pixies?
It's actually quite a good example, this one, of what we're doing here. We generally try to take the approach with the Creator that for certain functionality, if somebody else can do it better than us, then better work with them rather than try and recreate it ourselves and do it in an inferior way. So we did that, for example, with hand tracking, working with Interhaptics recently. We're doing that now here, working with Cognitive 3D. And exactly the same, we would point people towards Pixies for that. they do a great job, and yeah, it makes much more sense to work with them and then use your assets in the creator.
Right. Then, can you collect hand tracking analytics? Very interesting question.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few different approaches. I'm just preparing for the next question here as well on our Vimeo. But to answer the question, yes. So we do collect the hand tracking analytics. We can represent that as models, so if you want to be able to see the models within the scene, we can track it that way. But the simplest way is that we just do a skeletal representation of the different bones that are represented for the hand tracking. And it'll show natively within Scene Explorer. So that's available in the After Action Review tool. We've actually been doing this for a while. Went all the way back to Leap Motion, actually.
All right. How do you combine collecting data and user data privacy? For example, the GDPR. Sorry.
Okay. I can say a little bit, but I think Tony can probably say more. That is completely down to our customers and what they're building and how they interpret it. We do face different rules in different parts of the world, but Innoactive, as an example, as a German company, are very used to our customers working in the GDPR confines. We do have some who aren't able to collect data, but yeah, we just make sure we work very close and make sure the apps that our customers create work very closely within the local rules or the confines, and that user privacy is key there. But Tony, I don't know if you want to say anything on top of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the data privacy side, I think it's important to note that we don't collect any data that you don't send us. So you really have full control over the SDK in terms of like what user identifying information is actually sent to the platform and is actually collected by the SDK and stored on our side. In terms of like a data domicile and those types of situations, we do have a number of different initiatives underway in terms of hosting the data in the different regions that it needs to be hosted in. But currently, we do centralize all of our data hosting in our US-based data center.
So does this work with all devices? How do you work with accessories such as Tesla suit? Graham also.
So I can talk about the VR devices most definitely. So the creator actually works across all of the leading VR devices. So the whole concept of it is that creator is a plugin on top of Unity, and what you build in there, then you select the device you want to work with, be that something like Oculus, be that Vive, be that standalone devices. You can generate content and target it to a specific device. So yeah, it works across all devices. In terms of accessories, that's possibly one for Tony to answer, because I think especially the Tesla suit is probably one of the more analytical driven ones, especially with full body movements in there. So again, I'll let Tony pick up on.
So Tesla suit, yes, it's something that we've been working on in the back. We had some delays due to COVID last year, but we would be announcing it in the next couple of weeks. But yes, that is something that is in the pipeline right now.
To answer, how do you authenticate a user for VR training through the portal?
And the user, it's for portal, you can have user ID, so username, password, so the same security protocols that you'd have for other training methods, if you like, within training. So that's kind of an important thing. Now, depending on what the company is aiming to do in terms of the data they capture, whether they're looking at individual users or whether they're looking at just capturing the trends generically, then you can decide what data to take from there and to anonymize and so on if you want to. But yeah, it's individual user sign-in for the portal.
All right. Graham, maybe let's take a small break in the questions and go to the poll. I think we have a question. I'm developing a VR non-VR cross-platform training application and currently using game analytics from GA for getting user data. Is it possible to use Cognitive for non-VR users?
Yeah, so basically our SDK does work in anything built in Unreal or Unity. So, you know, the 3D-based applications also do work. Obviously, you lose a little bit of the context, right? So, you know, if you think about, you know, what a 3D application is versus a VR one, you know, the viewport into that application becomes the camera. And ultimately, that's what the user's field of view is going to be versus a more specific field of view that's granted through the VR-based headset. So I think you just, you know, if you come into it with the appropriate expectations in terms of like what you're going to be able to get from it, you know, you lose a little bit of that contextual information by doing a 3D-based application, but you gain that back if you're doing something cross-platform.
That's quite an interesting dovetail actually to something we've been working on with a creator that we went live with last week, actually, the first version, which is so-called desktop mode. We've got a lot of customers who deploy in VR training, but maybe especially in COVID times, can't get headsets to enough people, but they want to train a lot of people. So what they're doing is actually rolling out VR to the people who can access it in VR training, but exactly the same experience, but on a desktop, on a screen, or on a mobile device. And they're doing that, yeah, for the people who don't have access to VR. So it's kind of great news that you can take some of the data from it, even though, as you say, Tony, and I quite agree, it's maybe less impactful. It's yeah, still a great opportunity.
I think the main takeaway from that is that it's a unified experience, right? So, you know, if you're using Cognitive 3D both on the 3D application and the VR one, you've got a centralized point of assessment and the ability to tie into those learning management systems. So I think it's an important aspect to kind of think about, because even if you do lose a little bit of that context, you still have a centralized system that's evaluating both sides of the equation.
Let's keep going. We have several questions left. So does real-time analytics have an adverse effect on frame rate? What is the upper limit of poly count while retaining 90 FPS?
Yeah, so, you know, when we started the company back in 2016, we didn't really have the, you know, the privilege of using tethered headsets back then. You know, we were building for Gear VR, we were building for, you know, some of these mobile-based VR platforms. So, you know, when we built the platform from the ground up, we really had to consider, you know, basically the performance of mobile, you know, through that entire process. So, you know, that was a really important aspect of what we what built into the platform, and we actually fully disclose all of our performance metrics available on our documentation. So if you want to take a look at that after the call, you can take a look. But I think the important piece to mention is that we've optimized it pretty heavily, and our goals with collecting data off the headset, we're not streaming video and we're not streaming any polygons or anything like that off your device. We're just capturing time series JSON data of coordinates. So you're not ending up with any type of heavy data stream coming off the device to be able to provide the Cognitive 3D metrics.
All right. Are there any success stories analyzing the real-time data and fine-tuning the VR experience?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of them. You know, there's a number of different case studies available on our website. I think that, you know, in the early development days of your project, the Cognitive 3D SDK can be really helpful for UX and understanding how people are interacting with your application and how you might be able to improve it. I think one of the benefits of the Scene Explorer tool is that capability to be able to have that after action review, and that data is completely collected remotely, which means that you can actually distribute your application to a wide audience that is nowhere near your audience or near your office. And you're going to get intricate data of how they interacted within your experience that you can then evaluate either on a one-by-one basis or an aggregate basis to be able to understand how they interacted with your application. So I think it can be used in both formats, right? As a production tool and being able to measure, how people are performing in these environments, but also as something to be able to inform your development and understand how your stakeholders are reacting, even if you can't be in the room.
I think success stories actually, it's quite an opportune moment, purely because we've gone live with this integration, Watson. So I think we sent the press release out about 90 minutes ago. But we would love, if you're looking at doing it and you want to be a success story, we always like to try and make some case studies and some good news out of these type of things. And only that way, to be honest. And it's the same for a lot of the efforts people are making in the industry. Only that way will everything snowball. So if you're looking at working on it and want to be a success story, get in touch and we'll see how we can help you do that.
Does the tool allow near real-time insight of users' workload using heart rate?
Yes, absolutely. So the devices that we're supporting out of box for that are the HP Omnicept, which has a built-in heart rate as well as cognitive load built into the headset. We also have the Tesla Suit, which has built-in biometric capabilities directly in the suit as well. But one thing I did want to mention is that there is an abstraction layer for any other type of sensor. So if you do have a heart rate sensor that we don't necessarily natively support, if you get that data into Unity and use our sensor API, you're actually going to be able to get that stream of sensor data on a time series into the Cognitive 3D platform. So we've seen this be used for EEG and all sorts of other types of data that we don't necessarily natively have a partnership with.
Mm-hmm. All right. Do you also use 360 images for virtual training? But I don't know what this is relating to.
So the core functionality that we've got for the creator anyway, it's not so much 360 images, it's CGI driven. So the reason for that is because we like the ability to properly interact with the environment. That gives a far more meaningful level of training and a far deeper experience. So that's why we take that focus. If you've got training with just based on 360 images, you can still deploy it through, for example, our portal product. But yeah, the creator is designed really for building CGI.
Same answer from the Cognitive 3D side. I mean, we do have full 360 analysis tools for both images and video. It takes more of a POI type of approach or point of interest, which means that we're not just doing our general analysis on it. It's a kind of a lighter analysis on that type of stimuli. The areas where we've seen our customers actually use it is not just kind of blanket 360 environments, but more of hybrid environments where there's maybe a 360 background or situation, but the user still has agency with 3D objects and tools.
All right. And I have a very short question, but it is LMS Moodle compatible? Moodle?
So we don't necessarily natively support Moodle as it stands right now, but if you did have a project that required Moodle, you'd just let us know, and it's a matter of just doing some integration work with that. We built it as an abstraction layer, so supporting additional LMS systems is not actually all that difficult on our side, and it doesn't require any changes to your content. So for example, let's just say that you implemented the Cognitive 3D toolset and you're working with another customer who's using a different LMS. If you found, some obscure LMS that your new customer is using, you could come to Cognitive 3D. We'll go ahead and support that LMS. You make no changes to your application, and it's simply configuration on your side in terms of pointing to the new LMS system. So no Moodle today, could be there, but no fundamental or major change to be able to access that at a later time.
We've taken a somewhat similar approach from the Innoactive side of the creator. Basically talking to our customers, it's never a case of one LMS is the right one to go for, and so we've left it open so that customers are able to integrate the ones that are relevant for them. But yeah, otherwise I think you called it a rabbit hole earlier. We don't want to run down the wrong rabbit hole there, so we're kind of very flexible and open with who we work with now.
All right, and I have one last question. So anyone who wants to ask another question, this is the moment. Please put it in the chat, either directly or to me or in the general chat. So the last question I have here is, can you please give some high-level insights related to VR data collection in regards with data and engineering activities?
Yeah, throw out the playbook. You know, it really takes a ground-up approach to rethink kind of the data pipeline and the different steps that are involved to be able to collect spatial data on a time series. It's not difficult to collect spatial data for a single session. The real challenge comes when you want to aggregate that data and make meaning from it. And, you know, to be honest with the group here, I mean, we've rebuilt our data pipeline 3 times over the life of the company to be able to get this right. And we finally feel like we're at a place where, you know, we have an innovative approach that allows real-time query on spatial data, you know, and that ability to you know, take, you know, aggregate, you know, visual data or aggregate positional data or aggregate event data that has you know, spatial location associated with it, and ask, you know, real-time questions and filter that data. That's a significant challenge. So the data pipeline approach it's not standard. You know, it's not a typical event pipeline that you can just go you know, fire up some instances off AWS. And it requires a bit of strategic thinking. So, you know, I would just say it's a lot different, and you're dealing with you know, a 3D data point as opposed to something that's more of a event-based data point.
Okay, I didn't see any other questions in the chat, and we have, I think, a full set of poll answers. So we can finish the session actually on time and present the results. So I'm gonna end the poll and share. So maybe Graham, you wanna discuss them, because
Yeah, is there any change to what we previously covered there? So yeah, just as discussed before, so we've got a mixed audience in here of developers and enterprises. As the core answers, we have the stage you are at VR, the leaders in order: proof of concept 32%, deployed widely 29%. What's blocking you? Building relevant content. We hope we can help fix that. And finally, 44% of you are already deploying analytics tools, but others are using more, and excuse the word, primitive means. So we've definitely got some potential there to see how we can help you.
all right.
So yeah, thank you everybody for joining. If you want to know more, please get in contact directly with either Tony or myself. And yeah, we look forward to hearing from some of you.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.